confirm this or not, Nathan, but that's at least what it looks like in my perspective.
Just repeat that for me.
It looks like that the eye is not as warm as it was an hour or so ago.
An hour ago, okay. I know it's doesn't appear to be true. Eye temperature is still 15, which is what it has been for a few hours.
All right, well, then eye temperature is the same. Like I said, it just looks like it's a little bit cooler on my end. Might be because, well, obviously you're pulling up different imagery than I am. So maybe the higher res stuff that I'm looking at, it was 20, now it's 15, and the low res is still pulling up the 15. I'm not 100% sure what's going on with that. But that's probably what's going on there.
Orlando, are you there right now? Any thoughts?
Right now, my thoughts consist of absolute awe, mainly because of how well the storm has performed over the past couple of days, and the fact that it will be moving very, very slowly in comparison to other storms in a similar position, heading towards land areas is pretty ominous and nerve-wracking for me, especially knowing the fact that there's plenty of people down there in the dozens of thousands and across the southeast United States that may see impacts moving forward. Altogether, though, right now, I'd have to say that the storm is performing very, very well, and there is the possibility for even further intensification. It pulls it all.
Yep, indeed. Strat, what are you finding right now?
I mean, we're just still seeing an extremely dangerous situation of an extremely intense, powerful Category 4 hurricane that could deliver life-threatening conditions to many people. 15 expected, very heavy rainfall, Category 4 sustained, and other miscellaneous effects for potentially an extended period of time with this stalling out. That's what we're looking at directly right now. And then 3 days down the line to 4 to 5, then we're seeing, what could potentially happen to the United States as well. We're going to have travel to the coast. What's going to happen exactly? We have to keep an eye out on that as well. We already have people getting prepared well ahead of time there with the state of emergencies, getting supplies and stuff, restrictions being lifted so that in case the worst happens, it's a good thing to see governments take like that. Right now, we're looking at a extremely intense cyclone with almost 70 fully grounded right now. The eye is cooling ever so slightly. Like I said, it was last hour earlier at some point, maybe the hour before. They were kind of playing a cat and mouse look to see when those minus 70s will.
Yeah, we're starting to struggle with your signal a bit there, Strat. But the cloud tops generally hovering around the minus 70 region, but, well, almost completely minus 70 around the eye at the moment in the latest frames. Just two little gaps, one towards the north-northwest, another one towards the east. So 150, 155, both fair readings, whichever one we or anyone else might go with. Just not quite enough for Category 5, though. David, has there been any news on the ground? Preparations, evacuations, things like that?
Nathan, I really don't have any updated information, but I am keeping a close eye on it.
All right, just checking a few other things here.
Sorry, I was just going to ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
Looking at the projection of Dorian, what update can we give the viewers? Landfall. Well, we don't know if there is going to be a landfall. We probably won't know that till Sunday night, going into Monday.
For the US, I assume you mean?
Yes, for the US.
Yeah, at least. We might not even know then.
Landfall in the Bahamas. Right now, it's even that. Right now, it's not 100%
Yeah.
certain, but it seems extremely likely that the storm will pass over Great Abaco Island, and it might also pass over Grand Bahama. Obviously, the cross section for Grand Bahama is definitely smaller than Great Abaco, so it is possible they could jog north, make landfall on Great Abaco, and miss Grand Bahama. Either which way, both islands are likely to be subject to major hurricane force winds for a very extended period of time, likely lasting up to 24 hours of repeated major hurricane force winds from this storm, because it's expected to stall either over one of the islands or very close to those islands before ending up moving north by day 3. So it is very imperative to understand that in addition to potentially up to 25 inches of 25 inches of rainfall, there will also be very, very destructive winds for a long time. So if you are in a poor structure at this point in time, it is imperative that you go ahead and leave that poor structure and find a sturdier structure to take shelter in as soon as possible. For those that are less fortunate and are unable to move to a better structure, it is best that you hide out in an interior room or closet, preferably with a mattress over you. You would want to treat this as if you're getting hit by a tornado. Of course, any low-lying areas in the Bahamas are going to be prone to severe flooding. In addition to a 15-foot expected storm surge, we are also expecting possibly up to 2 feet of rain in some areas. This can obviously cause landslides in very sharp slopes, as well as flooding of minor creeks and streams that may be running through the islands as well. So if you're in an area that is prone to either storm surge or flash flooding, you would also want to either seek higher ground or get into another, well, seek higher ground or seek higher ground. Yeah, that's basically repeating myself. So it is very important that you are able to seek higher ground.
I think it's also worth mentioning, Devon, that the western sides of the islands won't be impacted as heavily by the storm surge as the east.
Correct. The eastern side of the islands is going to be getting it would mainly be the northern side of the island for Grand Bahama and the eastern side of the island for Great Abaco. That would be the strongest part of the storm because that's going to be the right front quadrant. That's the quadrant that produces the highest surge. Another takeaway from this is going to be expect power to be out for several days in the wake of this storm, maybe even up to a week. Due to the extreme wind that is going to end up happening here. Transformers are going to end up blowing. So you want to make sure that it's obviously too late to prepare one, but you need to make sure that you do have an emergency plan already in place. Make sure that you have appropriate water for everybody in your household as this storm approaches. So, just basic things like that. Of course, for people that are in Florida, tropical storm force winds are very likely along the eastern coast with potential hurricane force gusts. These gusts can also knock out power to regional areas in Florida. Those that may have power knocked out, again, you need to make sure that you have your emergency kits ready. If you do not have those, now is the time to make sure you have those final plans secured. It is very likely that supplies have already sold out in the area. I have a correspondent in Fort Myers, Florida, on the other side of the state that says that all of the essential supplies for preparing for the hurricane have already sold out 2 days ago. So if you haven't gotten those supplies, it's very unlikely that you will find them. I know that there are gas shortages in Florida as well for people trying to get gas for all of their vehicles. Further northward, we look into Georgia and the Carolinas. Now is the time to make sure you go out and get those supplies before they end up selling out. Make sure that you only take as much as you will end up needing for the storm and not more. Be courteous to others. Obviously, don't take like 20 cases of waters. That's not something that you should ever do. So make sure that you're not over preparing for the storm either, and you're being courteous to others that are also being in the way of the storm. If there are any evacuation orders, like I know that there's a mandatory evacuation for Broward County, make sure that you are heeding those evacuation orders, even if it does look like the storm is going to miss the area. These local emergency management professionals know what they're talking about. They know where the storm surge prone areas are. If your house is tagged in one of them, they're going to tell you to get out. Make sure that you listen to them. If you're not being told to evacuate, I would not evacuate in order to avoid major traffic jams. With Florida, it's one big long peninsula. Only way to go out is north. So it is always a very big traffic jam trying to get out of Florida. So it is very important that you make sure you follow the directed routes and that you don't that to the best of your ability, so you make sure you aren't overcrowding the freeways. So those are my best pieces of advice right now for basically everywhere.
All right. The storm right now is 134 miles from Great Abaco Island. Is that what it's called?
And I'd just like to point out that everything Devin has said is completely correct, and there will be a link being posted a few times shortly of how to be properly prepared for hurricanes when they hit their area. So for those in harm's way, if you don't know stuff already, read it up again. And if you are in harm's way, read this, make sure you're ready, and take preparations from it if you have not done so already.
A few more distances. It's 238 miles from Freeport now, 326 miles from Miami, Florida, 323 from West Palm Beach. Orlando is 431 miles from the storm at this time, and Jacksonville 493. I can tell you at the moment that the storm is moving a full 1.5 miles north of the forecast track right now, which is tiny, but it is still north of forecast track.
Yeah, so definitely have to monitor that for continued difference. Any divergence, the tiniest bit is vital at this point in time.
I think 1.5 miles is still too tiny, though.
Down the line. For now, yeah, but that continues to increase in any direction. We have to monitor it very closely.
Sure. What we're looking out for is to see if that increases and whether that track starts to turn further north. But at the minute, the movement north of forecast track wouldn't be enough to stop major hurricane force winds striking the Bahamas. Let's just do another check how fast the storm has moved in the last 2 hours. These are things that we're watching so closely because if the storm does begin to slow down, it does increase the chance that it might miss the northernmost Bahamas with its eye, although still the eye wall will most likely pass over. It could also have ramifications for the United States as well if it does slow down sooner rather than later. The imagery is not coming up for me just now, so I can't tell you how far it's moved in the last 2 hours. As soon as I know, I'll let you know.
Yeah, and I mean, regardless, we're looking at, how will this impact the states, just because, there's a lot more people there in terms of, viewers and actual people that live there. But, what we do know is this is going to deliver extremely adverse and potentially severe damage and impacts to a good chunk of the northern Bahamas, and that people there hopefully have their plans done already, because I would presume local supplies, because their islands are low, if not gone already, and that new shipments coming in probably, if there aren't any new ones that are already scheduled to come tomorrow, would likely be done at this point in time. So anyone there needs to have their plans set and listen to the local officials for any information, especially those lying on the East Coast. If they're on the coast where storm surge should be a massive problem, we're expecting 15 feet of storm surge at this point in time. That is easily life-threatening and life-changing.
Oh yes. Also, just now, in the last hour, we reported that the storm had briefly slowed down to 7 miles per hour. It's back up to 8 again, so it's not slowing down yet. I think we've got a lot of questions, so let's see if we can go through some of them now. Let's see. Some models have Hurricane Dorian as a Category 5 right now, I think they mean to say, and why don't we think it is? Well, I don't know who is saying that it's a Category 5, but none of the officials are, and not us, and no one that I know, and for good reason.
The satellite currently does not support Category 5. Recon also has yet to provide any evidence of this storm being Category 5. So there is a good reason why we're not running with it, and that is because in order to upgrade the system, you need to have sufficient evidence to be able to point one direction or another. If there is not sufficient evidence to say that the intensity is different, then the standard rule is to keep the intensity the same. Since we have not seen any information that would overturn a 150 mile per hour intensity, that is what we are going with.
So Devon, reading into that, do you personally think that it could be a Category 5 right now?
Me personally, I don't think it is. I haven't seen any evidence saying that it would be. I'm going to go with what the evidence says.
All right.
I don't see satellite evidence. I don't see recon evidence. I don't see Cat 5.
All right, sure. Okay,
and I mean,
fine.
Just for clarification, again, a 10-mile-an-hour difference or a 5-mile-an-hour difference at this point isn't going to really make much of a difference for those that are in harm's way. Regardless. Go ahead.
Just to piggyback on that, I mean, yeah, the damage is going to be significant whether you're caught in the 150 mile per hour maximum wind band or the 160 mile an hour maximum wind band, but it is a wind force difference of about 14%.
Yeah, exactly.
You can take that for being significant or not, but if it does go from 150 to 160 officially, that is a wind force difference of around 14%.
Which is still a good amount, but in general, we're looking at how this will impact lives and tracking it as best as we can. So, I mean, we're obviously watching it. That's why we're paying so much attention to satellite imagery, to recon, to official information and such. At the same time, though, we're not going to go too crazy over, making giant claims and stuff of Cat 5 or whatever and saying that's all that matters with this storm, because it isn't the only factor by a very large margin.
The eye wall appears to be getting even better on the infrared imagery. There is one gap at the northwestern side, but apart from that, we are now starting to see 3 or 4 different areas that are getting sub -70 Celsius cloud top temperatures, which I think we haven't seen before. What's more is that the eye temperature has warmed a bit more as well. It's now up to 17 degrees. So I'm going to run these numbers and see what we can find out from that, because there could be a possibility that we might give it 155 now.
Yeah, and like I've been saying for a while now, it's kind of just this continued thing of kind of cat and mouse, these -70 cloud tops to try to round off and close each other off. That northwestern side does have that bit of a gap right now, like you just said. You see especially on the 1 minute, but through the longer range imagery, the ones that go a few hours out and they don't update every second, you see like the 10 to 15, 20 minute updates. That's where you kind of see the whole circular chase around and see these kind of colder cloud tops are kind of blown up around the storm for the most part in the past several hours, and alarming to say the least for future prospects. But we're hoping that this kind of starts to level out now and starts to degrade.
We can hope.
Yeah, or essentially eye wall replacement cycle.
Yeah, although I don't know why we still aren't seeing any new signs of a new one yet. It kind of looked a bit like it earlier, but then the time just didn't match up with it. If you have any new questions, start your message to Force 13 all in chat. It helps us out a lot. Keeps us the discussion going. Someone said, could Dorian not slow down at all? And Someone said, I think there's something interesting.
Go on.
Is 14W a thing at this point in time?
No.
Because someone said, oh, there's signal 1 warnings in effect. I just wanted to make sure.
There might be.
Yeah, someone said there was signal 1 warnings in effect for parts of
But
the
14W isn't on the ATCF yet.
Not sure. What was it? Someone said, could Dorian not slow down at all? Is a question I think you guys can answer pretty easily.
Unless JTWC have circumvented the ATCF, but nope, they have not. There is no tropical cyclone in the Western Pacific yet. The Japanese Meteorological Agency have designated a tropical depression, though, out of 91W.
So that's probably what that person was talking about.
Could be.
Was it? Someone said, could Dorian not slow down at all? I think that's a question that we can answer pretty easily.
It's extremely unlikely. But we really couldn't tell you. If it didn't slow down at all, though, I think it would still move a bit further towards the north, probably landfall somewhere north of Florida.
Yeah, because what is it? It is still stronger than the models initializations have had for quite a while. We're going to need to continue to monitor that development, as well as seeing what the news data says, because there's about to be a southeastern northwest eye wall pass right now. In the next few minutes, we'll get an update on that and see what the eye pressure is now. Hopefully, they get the drop zone in the eye this time. Very difficult for them because this eye is the nautical eye is 10 miles wide from what they've been reporting, so very small. And you know, you have to get very precise with this stuff. We're going to see the latest info when we can see the southeastern quadrant also has Category 5 flight level winds.
Indeed, this is Force 13 Live. Strat, any questions? Now's a good time to take them. Any more questions?
A few questions, actually. What is going to make it slow down? That's going to be the steering current collapse when the ridge kind of ebbs away a bit to a more severe amount, and it kind of weakens the currents around it, kind of lets it stall out because there's nothing in particular going to be moving it too much. Someone asked, you guys can answer this probably, when will the ridge north of Dorian that's steering it right now start to weaken?
Sorry, what was that? When?
Yeah, when?
Well, I think Devon said earlier that it's already underway, right?
I'm sorry, I'm in about 3 different chat rooms at once right now.
Things are going crazy.
Information to Dorian.
Yeah, I was attention diverted as well. Strat, just to confirm it, we were talking about the ridge and its weakening.
Yeah, someone asked when is it going to start weakening? That was the question.
Okay. Yes, the ridge to the north is already starting to weaken. It was moving. This storm was moving 10 miles an hour yesterday. It's moving 8 miles an hour now, and it's only going to get weaker from here. So it hasn't fully broken down yet, like it will in 24 hours, but it has definitely started on the weakening trend.
We're just crunching some numbers here, and things are getting rather interesting. I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, someone said, could it make landfall in Florida? I mean, you can't rule that out still at this point in time. It's still within the cone of uncertainty, Florida itself, for potential landfall. And that's one standard deviation. So 33% of the time, the storm can go outside of this cone as well. So you can't say, no yet. But at least compared to yesterday and 2 days ago, odds have gone down quite significantly for something like that to happen. But you also have to keep in mind, just because the storm doesn't make landfall doesn't mean adverse impacts won't reach significantly onshore. If it stays even 20 miles offshore, hurricane force winds will definitely be impacting land. Storm surge will still be impacting. Tropical storm force winds will definitely be impacting. Heavy rain, rip currents, other things will all be significant factors for damages. So just because the storm doesn't make direct landfall doesn't mean severe damage doesn't occur at all.
David, did you have something to add?
Nathan?
Yes?
What did you get? What did you get for satire?
I will get back to you on that one very shortly.
Yes, please do, because I've got some recon data here in Strat. Please don't go off on it.
Okay, I will not.
Oh. Is something interesting happening? We're going to take a short break now anyway, we were due to. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes here whilst we figure out what on earth is going on with this storm. Back with more coverage. We're running until 11 PM tonight, as we did last night, in just a moment. Hurricane Dorian headed towards the northernmost Bahamas right now. Let's cross over to Devon with some news.
Yes. Am I coming through here?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, awesome. So Recon has just made its southeast to northwest pass through the eye. And this is the first time that I think that they've really got some really good clean data out of it. And except for the one spike here, they got a spike that went all the way up to 155 knot winds at the surface, which would be the equivalent of 180 miles an hour. They got flight level winds at 175 miles per hour. And it looks like the pressure has sunk beneath 940 millibars. So it seems like with this recon pass here through the radius of maximum winds, it does seem to support a Category 5 intensity at this time.
Wow. Well, get your reactions in the comments section and your comments and questions whilst we're on the air tonight till 11. We will continue to monitor the data. We've also just had a raw SATID, our satellite method of estimating the winds. We've just had our first Category 5 reading on that as well at 157 miles per hour. We're not going to make a decision officially as ourselves, Force 13, until the end of the hour, whether we're going to declare this a Category 5 or not. The National Hurricane Center may well do an update statement, do you think?
If they believe that this thing's a Cat 5, they will put an update statement within the next half an hour.
So we'll see what they think about that as well. So this is very interesting. It has certainly looked a lot better in recent frames. Just checking some more recent imagery to see if we can get a new eye temperature. It had risen to 17 degrees and it is now holding that pretty firmly again. So that's the warmest eye we've had in a little while now. So 17 degrees Celsius and cloud top temperatures. There are actually two distinct bands. The northeast and the southwest, which happens to be where the recon flew, appears to have the deepest convection. Looks like southwest just shading it, and that is at minus 73, and the northeastern side is at minus 71. So about half of the eye wall has minus 71, another quarter has minus 70, and there is just a little gap on the top left hand side which has minus 67. Bearing in mind the eye temperature has risen, it's probably a borderline category 5, and we're teetering on the edge on whether we're going to go above or below that threshold in our next displayed update.
Yeah, and interestingly enough with that is that the strongest winds that they're getting right now on the storm are in that northwestern quadrant, where this kind of weakness, where you could argue where the eye wall actually is right now. So that's an interesting tidbit to add on, to say the least. But I mean, regardless of whether or not this is a Category 5 storm, we already know that it's extremely dangerous and life-threatening system that can cause extreme loss of property, potentially many loss of life. Anyone in harm's way needs to be prepared right now and listen to any orders from local officials about any evacuations or preparations if they're given immediately, because there's not really, especially for the Bahamas, there's almost no time left to prepare. For the southeastern United States, you have a little bit of more wiggle room, but not really much in case this really does move west of the forecast track a bit.
So we now wait for what the National Hurricane Center say, and we could be waiting for just over an hour until that happens. Well, let's reiterate their warning information. This is the more real information that's applicable to people on the ground. A hurricane warning is in effect for the northwestern Bahamas, excluding Andros Island, which is under a hurricane watch. A tropical storm watch is in effect for Deerfield Beach to Sebastian Inlet. While some of our team members scramble to get some more information and see if we can do anything with that, let's take a look again at the key messages from this storm. According to the National Hurricane Center, a prolonged period of life-threatening storm surge, devastating hurricane-force winds, and heavy rains capable of life-threatening flash floods are expected on the Abaco Islands and Grand Bahama Sunday through Monday, and a hurricane warning is in effect for these areas. A tropical storm watch is in effect for a portion of the Florida East Coast. Since Dorian is forecast to slow down and turn northward as it approaches the coast, life-threatening storm surge and dangerous hurricane-force winds are still possible along portions of the Florida East Coast by the early to middle part of next week. Residents should have their hurricane plan in place, know if they are in a hurricane evacuation zone, and listen to advice given by local emergency officials. There is an increasing risk of strong winds and dangerous storm surge along the coasts of Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina during the middle of next week. Residents in these areas should continue to monitor the progress of Dorian. Heavy rains capable of life-threatening flash floods are possible over coastal sections of the southeastern United States from Sunday through much of next week. And just to show you again the wind speed probabilities there, the tropical storm force wind probabilities, and also the actual track.
Yeah, and if you have any comments or questions that you want us to answer now with this information, any new developments, such, start your message with Force 13 all in text or at Force 13 in text. It lights up the message for us in a nice bright orange, allows us to see it. I'm sure with all the people here, there's going to be plenty of questions for us to be able to get to during the next 20 minutes or so before our next break. Hopefully all of them are going to be very important, and we can get some substantive conversation out of that. Do we have I don't know, there's a lot of new people here, so do you want to go over the models really quick as well? Because
yeah, sure, if you like.
At least for the United States, definitely not the Bahamas at all, but the good news, I guess, with any intensification right now is that it's going to push the storm further north, potentially, and then eventually a bit further to the east as well.
All right, well, we'll take it whenever you're ready, Strat.
Oh, I thought you were gonna have it up. Okay.
No,
let me-
not no way, Strat. I
Oh,
can't
God.
do that.
Okay, give me a split second. I gotta pull this stuff up now.
Strat will be with you in a moment. We'll continue to look at the imagery whilst we wait for that. Just saw a question about the CDPS there. Is it a stage 7 yet?
Stage 7, I would definitely classify it as that right now for the Bahamas. Actually, let me go ahead and run that really quick for you.
Please.
Well, that's that I have the model scatter plot up for the 0Z guidance. Pretty interesting. Definitely going to have to watch for adverse impacts along the southeastern coast at this point in time. I'd like to point out this there's just still a huge uncertainty at this point in time. The models have been, changing pretty drastically back and forth. The 205-mile uncertainty at the 5-day point, 155 at the 4-day point, and 33% of that time with the official cone actually goes out of it as well. It can go out of the standard deviation sometimes as well, so you have to keep an eye on that as well. And just because these dots show where the center of the storm may be, that doesn't mean that's where all the impacts are either. Impacts from a cyclone can extend well outside of the center of the storm. Not just winds, but rain, surge, surf, flooding, landslides, mudslides, you name it, it can happen significantly away from the center of the storm. Just because the strongest winds are in one spot doesn't mean the storm is impacting just one spot. That's why the NHC has, the cone of uncertainty for a reason. And this is the scatter plot that you have up here right now of the motion. A pretty consistent idea of the stalling here around the Bahamas for about a day or so before the northwest and then north and then northeast turn potentially. So we're pretty certain right now northern Bahamas are going to get some very severe impacts at the moment. 15 feet plus storm surge possible, potentially 2 feet plus of rain in isolated areas because of the stalling, very heavy rainfall, major hurricane force winds possible, tropical storm force and hurricane force winds almost a certainty among most of those northern islands as well. Rip currents, high waves, you need to keep an eye out for all of these. Very, very dangerous situation right now.
Completely. What about intensity models on there?
Let me pull this up really quick as well. Here's the intensity one real quick. Something you note, though, is that all of them, except the 2, have it peaked right here at 0Z, so 1.5 hours ago. If any of the things we have are actually confirmed as potentially accurate, and we actually go with that, the next update and the NHC does a special advisory and whatnot, then these are going to have to be adjusted up by at least 10 knots. And, the models are going to have to go completely mayhem again at 6Z to see what else they want to happen with it, along with any track adjustments that may have happened with it as well. So if we actually go with that official number at the top of the hour, and the NHC does a special update and such where they just go with it at 11 p.m., these are going to be inaccurate. Sooner. And we're going to have to work with and change stuff up from there to see what happens.
Again, it's true, indeed.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Going off of the question for the cyclone destruction potential scale, currently projected for the landfall in Bahamas with 150-mile-an-hour winds, and with the size as noted in the NHC forecast advisory, and with a maximum potential rainfall of 25 inches. That would currently give it a high-end stage 7. So definitely a potentially catastrophic situation for Great Abaco and Grand Bahama.
So this is what we're looking at, a potential Category 5 storm. Whether it will become one officially or not remains to be seen. It's certainly put on a show so far. Devon, do you think it is based on the evidence now that you have seen?
They found 175-mile-an-hour flight level winds, and with that potentially suspect surface reading of around 180. But even if you go ahead and throw that out with the flight level winds of 175 miles an hour, that is pretty indicative of 160 mile an hour on the ground level. I would think that it is with that latest pass.
Does anyone not think that it might be?
I mean, I was starting to lean towards 155 at the start of this hour, but this is very sombering data, unfortunately, that we're going to have to take in and, I guess, make the most out of what we have. It looks like NOAA Mission 2 might be done right now as well. It looks like they might be heading out of the storm unless we see a turn happen in the next update on the info of where that recon plane is. So Mission 26 might be done, and AF308 Mission 25 is going to probably do another. It's going specifically for another southeast to northwest eyewall pass at this point in time. The latest drop zone from that one that verified put the pressure down to 940 millibars, actually. So we are still seeing intensification with the pressure as well. And that 1 minute imagery is still trying to kind of close off the full ring of negative 70s as well. So not just really a great situation to see develop right in front of our eyes right now, unfortunately. Especially, everyone's talking about the United States mostly just because that's where the largest population concentration is. But we have to talk about where this is hitting right now, too, which is Grand Bahama, Freeport, Northern Bahamas. There's a lot of people there that are going to see the storm at its strongest, even compared to the United States as well, if severe impacts happen there. And we need to be prompting these people, especially to stay on guard and be as prepared as possible, and for them to stay as safe as possible as well.
All right, we'll do our best to field some more questions in the next 15 minutes before we take a short break at the end of the hour. We're here until 11 o'clock when the 11 p.m. Of course, as the time is, National Hurricane Center advisory comes in. The main forecast advisory is the big one that we often look at towards the end of the night. And we will be staying up for that and bringing you the latest information. The National Hurricane Center might be calling Dorian a Category 5. It depends on what they feel is the case. But a decent chance that they could upgrade it. Or, I don't know. I mean, Devon thinks it's a Category 5. I think the community would be completely enraged if they didn't go with it. But if they didn't go with it, then surely they would have a very good reason not to.
Yeah, you'd hope so. And, and there's a reason we're not just outright declaring it right now with this. We're waiting for further developments because, it's kind of been teetering on the edge of such an intensity most of the night. And, especially with this 1 minute imagery and such, you don't want to, we've said multiple times, you don't want to just jump the gun and such and whatnot and just, get ahead and go crazy with it. And, we're doing our best to provide up-to-date and immediate coverage rather than just go, full-on fanatic. But, we could be approaching a point where, we're beyond plausible deniability that this could unfortunately be a system that has reached Category 5 intensity, despite hopes that it would not do so.
Hello.
We're also joined by Thomas now. Once again, I think this is the third time you've come on our stream tonight. We're not complaining. How are you?
No.
And what do you think of the current situation?
I'm doing well. I'm here to stay for the rest of the stream, however long that is now. But at this point, I'm not particularly surprised with the latest developments. As you know, I've been a proponent of the storm hitting a Category 5 for a little while now. And I think that we're witnessing that happening. I know that we have evidence to indicate that it may be there. I don't know if that's with 100% certainty. Do we know how long it would have been at this intensity?
Sorry, what?
So are we declaring it Category 5 officially on Force 13?
We are making a decision at the end of the hour.
Got it.
Until then, we're just still getting all of our numbers together just to ascertain whether we are going to put the upgrade on or not. Of course, we don't want to mislead people, but if we really do think it's a Category 5 storm, then we're going to put it on our screens.
Yeah, just a very unfortunate situation right now for the Northern Bahamas, and hopefully everyone there has been aware of this for a while now. The potential threat is already prepared and is safe and in a secure location in preparation for the storm. And just to think of how crazy it is that we're seeing this potentially happen is that 5 days ago, less than, we were assuming that this could be a tropical depression or dissipated at this point in time. 3.5 days ago, after the center relocation, we were thinking it was looking disgusting and it could possibly dissipate before potentially reforming closer to its current location, be a much weaker system. But here we are now with this potentially catastrophic storm.
Devon.
Okay, I'm just looking at this here, taking a look at the drop because they missed the eye again with the drop. You know what? I'm not going to comment on that. What I am going to comment on is the fact that the recon plane has done a U-turn. NOAA 2 has done a complete U-turn, and they are heading likely back directly into the northwest eye wall to see if they can confirm those that 155 knot measurement that ended up happening at the surface. Yeah, we're gonna need to confirm this, and if that ends up being confirmed on this pass, I think we might be looking at a storm that might be a lot stronger than 160 miles an hour here.
Wow. I thought that plane was done for the night. I thought it was going back, and then we were going to have AF 308 finish it up. I did not expect that they were going to turn back again.
Yeah, they immediately did a U-turn. They went all the way out to investigate. All right, where's the tropical storm force winds? Okay, it ends here. As soon as the tropical storm force winds ended, they immediately hooked a U, and they are heading back towards the center of the storm. Like I said, it was a really big outlier measurement. They're going to probably try to confirm that, figure out what ended up happening. But the drop zone missed the eye and seemed to also confirm Category 5 winds. So I'm thinking that they're probably going to want to get one more pass to make sure what this storm is actually doing. And I think this pass is going to be very critical determining what the intensity the National Hurricane Center will go with.
Yeah, this is like a very extreme situation that we need to continue to monitor with the utmost detail at this point in time. I'm kind of shocked that they decided that they were going to pull this thing back in. This was the one that took the longest time to get out there. I thought they were just going to be done. You know, just the way it looked like they were heading out like that. And then to see them do a U-turn like that kind of surprised me. I thought they were just going to let AF 308 take the turn in and do it like that. But I guess they're wanting as much information as possible as quickly as they can get it.
So we wait for more confirmation at this point, whether the recon plane finds anywhere near the wind speeds that it just recorded inside the storm. This is live. We are getting the information in real time. We're trying to keep waffle to a medium, to a minimum. Not even a medium, a minimum. Whilst we try and ascertain exactly where we're at with this storm, because this is a rather crucial period, so much so that I'm losing my vocabulary skills. In just a few moments we'll be taking a short break, then we'll be returning back with the stream. It will be our final hour of commentary coming up next. We'll be going off at 11. After that we will keep the live stream running with the satellite picture in real time. The latest image from this satellite is just half a minute old, 30 seconds old. That is one of the most recent images that we've managed to source at the same time. That's great.
And those cloud tops seemingly reinforcing that northwestern eye wall once again. That cat and mouse game of trying to close off setting the minus 73 cloud tops is just continuing non-stop, really. And whenever it looks like things might be closing off a bit, new bursts of convection kind of just sprout out. And keeping out through this whole situation, this eye too has just remained impeccable on satellite imagery.
It certainly has, and again, those cloud tops are pretty good around the storm too. There is still that little gap on the western side where the cloud top minimums are around minus 66. Along the northern side, you're looking at a temperature minimum of -72. On the southern side, it's -71, but it is expanding. So generally you have a large area of -70 cloud tops. Satellite imagery would suggest a borderline category 5 right now with a 17 Celsius eye. I'm throwing a lot of numbers out. Those who aren't familiar with it, the warmer the eye in terms of temperature in Celsius, the stronger the storm, and the colder the cloud tops, also measured in degrees Celsius, though that also denotes a stronger storm as well. What we're really looking for in layman's terms is the more black that encircles the eye, the stronger the storm is, and if you've been watching the coverage all day today, you'll notice that that has increased quite markedly later on this evening. We're taking a short break now. We'll be back in a few minutes with an update and to confirm whether or not we think that the storm has reached Category 5 status. Don't miss it. We'll be back with more discussion and the National Hurricane Center's advisory at the end of the next hour. We'll be back with you in just a few minutes. Coverage continues in a moment. You can also help the project become even better by becoming a patron. You can see more information about all the benefits involved by visiting patreon.com/Force13. With a special thanks to these people for being our most valued patrons this month. You can also check out our growing merch store so you can show Force 13's colors wherever you go. You can also find a link to our Discord server underneath this video in the description. You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Force 13 has announced that Dorian is now a Category 5 with winds of 160 miles per hour and a pressure of 939 millibars. Is the latest at this hour. 2 a.m. UTC. The current time on the US East Coast is 10 p.m. The graphic at the bottom should have updated, but it didn't for some reason. We'll try and get onto that in just a moment. My name is Nathan Foyne with instant reaction from the team. Consisting of Orlando, Strat, Sam, Devon, and Thomas. Thoughts?
Well, I've been saying it for a long time now, so I'm not overly surprised, but still a big development nonetheless, and we're getting more evidence of Category 5 and even some that it could be stronger than 160. So
Yes.
I'm getting really concerned about
The wind measurements are showing about. The wind measurements are showing readings of at least showing up to 150 knot wind speeds, which is nearly 180 miles an hour. But we are decided to stick with an estimate of 160 miles an hour, which does make it a Category 5 hurricane.
I mean, well, we can't say without a shadow of doubt that this is an absolutely catastrophic situation for the northern Bahamas and everyone that lives there. And it looks like, unfortunately, if they continue to go on, these colder cloud tops are trying to finish off wrapping around that western side right now as well. As that recon starts to reversal and come on in, we could get a confirmation of more intensity. It looks like within 20 minutes we're going to have the next iPass before halfway through the hour. We're going to have full confirmation, see if the NHC updates before the end of this hour for sure.
They'll probably wait for the update by now, since I don't think they've done an update statement, not at this point. So, well, I think, is it beyond doubt?
I mean, based on recon and stuff, and, you know, we got Satid as well to back it up and just general satellite
Satid was just getting its first Category 5 reading, so it would have had to have carried for a little while, but it was getting very close.
I mean, just with the trends that we're seeing in the recon data, it's just an unfortunate yes, whether or not we like it or not. I really wish it wasn't the case, but we're kind of just getting kind of pushed up against the wall, you know?
Let me remind you of the latest warnings that are in effect, regardless of the storm's current intensity. A hurricane warning is in effect for the northwestern Bahamas, excluding Andros Island. Andros Island itself has a hurricane watch. A tropical storm watch is also in effect from Deerfield Beach to Sebastian Inlet. There's the National Hurricane Center track map from 8 p.m. The intermediate advisory, the forecast track will change to whatever the National Hurricane Center think is appropriate at the 11 p.m. update, which is at the end of this hour. They will most likely declare it a Category 5 storm. With what winds, we don't yet know for sure. We think 160, but some of you suggesting it could be higher.
Yes, if right now Recon seems as though it's heading back to confirm the previous reading that had up to a non-suspect 155 knots. So they're going to see if that confirms, especially with the drop zone that also had a same reading. So if it depends if that verifies and how high it is going to be. I believe that's what the NHC is going to go with at that point.
Yep, what we're just waiting for right now is we're probably going to get a reconnaissance pass here from NOAA 2 in 20 minutes. We're going to have data for that in 25 minutes, we'll say. We should be able to have that coming out of the bottom of the hour. we should definitely have the pass by then. We might get it sooner, but this is definitely a very dangerous situation now for the Bahamas, especially if this thing has strengthened underneath our noses more than we have already expected, and maybe those readings weren't necessarily as suspect as we may have thought. And maybe this storm's actually been a Cat 5 all this time. Maybe we don't know. But one thing I can tell you is that the flight level winds is absolutely indicative of a 160 mile an hour system. I think the question is how strong are the winds at the surface? And that's what we're trying to verify right now.
And we always act on what we see, what we appear to have had in evidence. It perhaps might have been a controversial decision for us to go with Category 5 at this point, but it does appear rather likely from satellite estimates and from recon estimates that that is going to be confirmed by the National Hurricane Center at the update within an hour.
Yeah, it's just an extremely unfortunate situation to see unfold. I know yesterday we were talking a bit about, with the cloud tops intensity based on the warm eye and the kind of lackluster cloud tops at the time. How Irma was, 180, 85 miles an hour, depending on what you want to say, despite it barely having -70 cloud tops wrapped all the way around. But, just seeing this new recon data come in right now, we're kind of stuck with a very similar situation, unfortunately. You were thinking maybe the cloud tops were a bit subpar for a storm to be that intensity, and then Reconnaissance comes in and just shatters all expectations. We're looking
and
for...
just to note as well that the storm is now 125 miles from Greater Barco in the Bahamas. 125 miles. So it's moving at generally about 8 miles per hour. At the minute, if we were to extrapolate its current movement, which I was about to do, I'm just trying to figure something out here. Now, extrapolation isn't very wise usually, but I just want to see what it would come up with for the purposes of this, just to find out how far it's traveled. Okay, this will take a moment. So it would make landfall on Greater Barco 163 miles away near the northern point of the island, and 163 miles, 8 miles per hour, that's about 20 hours away, assuming the storm stays at the same speed and movement and direction, but the chances are it could slow down a little bit more. It certainly will at some point, only that the National Hurricane Center are suggesting that that probably won't happen until it actually is upon those islands.
Yeah, I mean, if there's any silver lining in this situation, which, in harsh reality for places that are going to be harmed, there isn't. The only possible plus side that you can manage to find out of this is that it means that the storm could potentially move further north and east. But at this point in time, that's really not what we're caring about at all. We're just looking for potentially devastating situation for the northern Bahamas, where Dorian has a chance to actually make a direct landfall now, potentially as a Category 5 storm, unfortunately. This is
still doubt that.
I said potentially. It could easily weaken before then at this point in time.
But then who knows, because this storm... We're just going to be waiting for that recon information. The planes are in and around the storm. They've already captured some Category 5 winds, and we'll see if they capture some more in the course of the next 30 minutes.
Okay, so I can tell you right now that I don't have the exact information yet. They haven't made the full pass on the eye. Looks like that we are literally one data point short.
Oh, yeah, it's
one or
southeast
two
to northwest.
1 or 2 data points short of the actual passage within the eye. So
we're almost there. In 10 minutes.
We will get this information to you guys in about 10 minutes. 10:19 is when we should have this information by. 10:19 Eastern.
And that's going to be very important information when it comes in. The National Hurricane Center will update soon. We're looking out just in case they do a special advisory. I can't see that they will at this point. And what's the minimum pressure that they've captured so far, just to clarify?
I was 938.5 was the minimum flight level pressure that they recorded. I don't know what the drop zone said, but that was in the eye.
Yeah, the drops keep missing the eye. So
like if you're not, we can try to bash them at the same time, but at the same time we really can't because the eye is so small. It's 10 miles. No, I know we're not actually, but you know, people will try to say they're not doing their job and stuff. They're missing the eye. It's a 10 nautical mile eye from what they've been recording. They're doing the absolute best job that they could. And this could have been almost a blessing in disguise, this miss, because it's allowed them to get potential data to encourage a turn back to reconfirm potential data. And it's given us more crucial information to potentially better prepare the Bahamas.
For those interests on land right now, just to read out again, these are the percentage probabilities for tropical storm force winds in the next 5 days. Believe it or not, even Washington DC at 3%, Ocean City 8%, Charlottesville 4%, Richmond, Virginia 8%, Norfolk 13%, Raleigh, North Carolina 17%, Cape Hatteras 40%, Fayetteville 30%, Morehead City 51%, Wilmington 48%, Florence 38%, Columbia, South Carolina 28%, Myrtle Beach 64%, Charleston 61%, Atlanta, Georgia 5% there, Savannah 55%, Waycross 41%, Jacksonville, Florida 60%, Daytona Beach 73% still, Orlando 65%, Fort Pierce 94%, West Palm Beach 91%, Fort Lauderdale 80%, Miami 43%, Homestead 33%, Key West at 16%, Naples at 24%, Tampa 33%, Apalachicola 12%, going up there, Panama City 8%, Destin 4%. On Grand Bahama, 99% of tropical storm force winds, may as well call it 100, and on the same island, it's 72% chance for hurricane force winds. On New Providence, 79% for tropical storms, 6% for hurricane, and on Andros Island, 31% chance of tropical storm conditions there. So those are the percentage chances in short. You can see across the sidebar and the bottom bar, every so often they flash across those percentage chances and rainfall expectations too. Just to show you a graphical depiction of that rainfall expectation too, you can see it here. As you can see, the northernmost Bahamas up to or increasing above 20 inches of rain, isolated amounts of 25 actually, and then along the coast of Georgia, South Carolina into North Carolina, generally 6 to 10 inches in those areas. The coast of Florida could still get to 10 inches maybe in some isolated areas, but generally we're now looking at around 4 to 8 inches, and that's what the National Hurricane Center has been saying as well. But you can see inland, we were initially talking a few days ago about maybe the possibility of a 20-inch rainfall occurring inland in Florida. Because the storm track has moved so much towards the east, we're now expecting inland only about 2 to 4 inches.
And it's just the irony with this whole situation that just a few days ago we were expecting that this storm would be a tropical depression or dissipated at this point in time. So, you know, the drastic change from expecting nothing to seeing what we now declare a Category 5 storm that could deliver devastating impacts to parts of the northern Bahamas before possibly impacting the southeastern United States adversely is pretty extreme, to say the least. You know, the fact that this happened right under our noses is absolutely shocking. And, you know, it's something that's still, you know, you could say it's a bit hard to grasp. Are you like, you know, really, was this really supposed to happen, like, right underneath us? But I guess it just unfortunately has. And we're looking at an extremely powerful now Category 5 storm that could potentially create a pretty significant loss of life and major property loss and change numerous lives for people across the Bahamas.
Anyone else like to add anything at this point?
I think, I mean, at this point, we're kind of just waiting for the new recon to pass through. We got one that's
5 minutes.
But for anyone that has any questions in the chat they want us to answer, I know we have a ton of people right now watching. Start your message with Force 13, all in text, or at Force 13. Lights the message up in a bright orange, makes it easier for us to see, and makes life a lot easier and helps us.
It's a great time to send some questions in. Sure.
Create some discussion. I think a lot of us here are kind of just a bit in shock almost that we're kind of seeing the situation develop. You know, was it yesterday we said 2%?
No, it wasn't yesterday. Yesterday we were saying 25%.
No, 2 days ago.
2 days ago, it was about 8%, I think.
No, it was 2%.
3 days ago, it was 2%.
And the day before, we said 1%. And here we are now.
Yeah, those percentage chances kept rising.
All expectations have really been shattered, basically. Oh, wow, we have a lot of questions coming in now.
There you go.
Yeah.
You better get onto
a
them.
lot of people are asking, what are the odds that this could move back and end up making a potential landfall or getting a lot closer to Florida again?
Well, the landfall in Florida can't be ruled out right
Still,
now. Taking a look at where it is in the cone, greater than a 33% chance.
Yep.
And just to show you that cone again here on the screen, that was the National Hurricane Center's latest cone. They will produce another one at 4 a.m. 4 a.m. my time, 11 p.m. I keep doing that. 11. It's only crept in recently. 11 p.m. Eastern time.
People are asking for the rainfall graph again, but some people are asking for South Carolina and Georgia if we want to pull that up. I think it's like 4 to 8 inches on the coastline.
Can run back over there to the rainfall graph.
Some people asking, is Virginia safe from this whole thing? The forecast gets really hard at that point once we get to 4 and 5 days, because the model's been changing drastically.
The odds are in your favor.
Yeah, but Virginia is in the cone of uncertainty at this point in time, too. So there is still a chance that the center of the storm could be over Virginia at the 5-day mark. It's within the 205-mile standard deviation from where they expect the exact center to be. And even then, you have to keep in mind 33% of the time the storm tracks outside of that cone as well.
All right, so I've got to address something.
Things are out of the... Yes.
One of our commenters just said the NGX2 model calling for 196 miles per hour. Just like to point out that same model called for Hurricane Florence to be 185 miles an hour, and that didn't happen.
Yeah.
A far-fetched model, to say the least.
Yeah. I mean, if we take a look at Virginia and stuff, though, we can't rule out adverse impacts for parts of Virginia, but we can't say that they're not extremely likely at this point in time. It doesn't mean you can rule it out, though.
Plenty more questions that are coming in there. The next Andrew ? There's been plenty of comparisons to Andrew throughout the last 2 or 3 days. And it is probably one of the best analogs. Yeah.
I mean, so far, since the center relocation, it's been a very close analog to Andrew, and I personally think Andrew is the best analog you can get for this storm right now. They're two small storms that started weak. They rapidly strengthened. They're both really Category 5s by this point in their lifetime. The difference is going to be that Dorian's going to make a turn in Andrew.
Recon data has just come through, and I think we could say without a doubt that this thing is a Category 5 and is actually stronger than 160 miles an hour. Recon passing from the northwest to southeast, they got 143, 148, 147. Only one of those were flagged in the northwest quadrant, and then in southeast quadrant, they got 145 knots. So it's safe to say that the storm is at the very least 165 miles an hour.
And flight pressure continuing to drop to 937.9 millibars in tropical storm force flight level winds as well. So we could potentially be seeing official pressure down at the surface in the 930s. Hopefully this drop zone ends up landing in the center. We're not for sure yet. And the other recon is about to do the pass as well, from the southeast to northwest as well.
Yep, it has that data. That data actually just came through as well. A lot more suspect data on there, but all of the SFMRs in the northwest quadrant are also above 140 knots. So it looks like from I'd say Recon has just confirmed 165-mile-an-hour winds with this storm.
And
Oh, wow.
unfortunately, at least with the AF308, the pressure readings still glitching out, just not coming in whenever it crosses the eye for some reason. But unfortunately, it does look like Recon is just confirmed a Category 5 storm.
Yeah, and I think it's also, and I've also looked around looked at some of the other storms, other powerful storms that have occurred in other basins around the world this year, and after finding out that Dorian passed is basically at 160 miles an hour, it's currently the strongest storm of the year. And which is
Well, there hasn't been
pretty
much
surprising.
competition for the strongest storm of the year in the Atlantic so far.
I'm talking about the
worldwide.
Worldwide, it's currently the strongest storm worldwide for the year.
Yeah, most likely is. Which is somewhat of a surprise, because the Western Pacific usually produces the strongest storms. Still plenty of time for that basin, of course, but this is... now, if it actually is 165 miles per hour, then could this be the furthest north 165 mile an hour? We're not quite in that territory yet, are we?
Not yet, but if Recon continues to show a strengthening system and satellite imagery continues to back it up, it's not out of the realm of possibility, unfortunately, but we really just have to wait and see.
The convection continues to blow out in these frames. There isn't really any weak spots now, like we were talking in the last hour that there was really. Yeah, the western side is a bit more flakier, but we're actually now looking at the weakest point of the western eye wall right now, with temperatures of minus 68 Celsius. Now, for those who aren't familiar with the numbers, that is quite low. If you see minus 70s wrap around the eye, then that is usually an indicator of Category 5. Minus 70 wraps around the rest of the eye apart from that little weak spot, peaking at minus 72 in the northeast, and in the southeast it's minus 73. So generally very good condition. Also, the eye temperature is really in the storm's favor too, which is helping to bump up that intensity beyond what we would usually give it. 17 degrees Celsius the eye. Actually, it's now 18. That's gone up another degree. 18 degrees Celsius in the eye. That, by the way, is a warmer eye than what Hurricane Irma achieved in 2017, even though its cloud tops were marginally better. Now, only marginally better than what this storm is producing now.
Yeah, and I'd just like to point out something else quickly with the Recon. I think we may have been getting some misleading information from AF308 in terms of the wind speed as well, because I noticed through its passes, it only showed one Cat 5 barb. Even through its northwest pass here, just showed none, despite the fact that that's the strongest sector. And considering that it's also had pressure glitches and malfunctions with its machines, it looks like some of the information from that one may have been on the low side potentially for actual wind strength from that. It's pretty thankful we had NOAA 2 in right now to get us potentially much more accurate data that we're able to use right now to provide the best information possible.
Devin, any comment?
At this point, we're just waiting for drop 20 to see what that pressure is. Wind speed seems pretty undebatable to be at least 165 miles per hour at this.
Yeah, just an absolutely disastrous situation that's developed right now for tons and tons of people. I mean, some people are saying the pressure's a bit high, but you have to keep into account it is a small storm.
That's what they're finding.
Also, people are forgetting when Matthew was a Category 5, or at least to Devin was considered a Category 5. Its pressure was right around where Dorian's is right now, and is further south too, in a bit of a larger storm. So the pressure isn't too outlandish, really, to put a reminder out there for people in chat that are a bit, talking about that being a bit uncertain. If you have any questions, though, that you want us to answer, there's a lot of you right now. Start message with Force 13, all in text, or at Force 13 in text.
I've noticed as well.
Light up, very helpful, helps drive conversation. Someone's asking, could this still hit Florida? Devin, you want to go with that because you've been answering that a lot tonight.
It could.
Yeah, well, Florida is still very much under the gun for tropical storm force winds. Hurricane force gusts also still very likely. Sustained hurricane force winds and an actual landfall, it's still really hard to tell. I think we're probably, unfortunately, still another 24 hours away from really telling if the eye is going to come ashore here or not, and maybe even that might not be enough time. Florida is still very much within the National Hurricane Center's cone of uncertainty, and currently the HWRF does take the storm ashore in Florida. So if you're anywhere on the east coast of Florida, absolutely prepare for hurricane force conditions and a sustained power outage, along with at least 5 to 10 feet of storm surge.
Yeah, and not just in Florida. A lot of people are asking for Florida as well. That's why the Bahamas are almost certainly going to receive at least part of the major hurricane force winds, 15 feet storm surge possibility. Isolated areas possible, 20 plus inches of rain, absolutely potentially devastating situation for those places. All people asking, I think Nathan, you might be able to answer this one pretty well. What is the chance of a landfall in Georgia? I think we can say it's typically hard just because the angle and geography makes it very difficult for that.
Georgia, yeah, because Georgia doesn't have as much coastline as all of those other states either. And of course, it's quite set inward. The chances are fairly low. It's statistically quite rare for hurricanes to actually make landfall there. But I don't know. It would be better to say, I mean, people always ask the question, will the storm make landfall? It doesn't have to make landfall to deliver hurricane conditions to your house. And I think the chance of that in Georgia along the coast is pretty high.
Yeah, I think we've been making sure to reiterate that tonight, that just because a storm doesn't make landfall doesn't mean adverse impacts won't affect you and the area as well. Effects from a storm would go way out from just the center. I think Dorian right now is the radius of tropical storm force winds has started to.
Yeah, well, you look at the cone, the orange little ball around the center of the storm, that is the tropical storm wind extent out from the center of Dorian. That was as of 8 p.m. Now, the center of the storm, not the winds, but the center of the eye of Dorian could pass anywhere within that cone. So yes, that could mean a West Palm Beach landfall, or it could be an Outer Banks landfall, or it could be no landfall at all. But on top of that, you've got to consider that wind field, which for the first 2.5 days of that forecast is bigger than the cone. So you've got to really bear that in mind. Tropical storm force winds, therefore, are likely along some parts of the coast of Florida, namely the Tropical Storm Watch zone. I'm not sure the National Hurricane Center will issue any new warnings on that just yet. They'll probably do that tomorrow. They'll probably extend the Tropical Storm Watch first, actually. But we are waiting for their update, which will come sometime in the next half hour. Are recon planes still in and around the storm? They'll probably wait on it.
Let me take a quick refresh. It looks like the one that just went in, the NOAA 2 that's been getting us the most accurate readings, might be heading out for good now. It just is heading north and just took a turn to the west. Hurricane force flight level winds extending all the way out on the northwestern quadrant to the end of the cloud cover of the system. So that's an interesting thing to note, that that potentially the wind radius of hurricane force winds is a bit wider than previously thought in that quadrant. And it also looks like AF 308 might be done as well. Maybe, I'm not quite sure. It's only done 3 passes so far. It might do another turnaround. It's also heading northwest right now, so they're both heading in the same direction. We'll probably in the next 10 to 20 minutes be able to get a tell if one of them's turning back again after they're both done for the night.
I would imagine AF308 would go for one more pass, but NOAA 2's been in there for quite a while, so I wouldn't be surprised if they were, because it looked like that they were going back, and then they were like, no, we're confirming what we just found.
Yeah, and the other thing with NOAA 2 as well is it actually took off before AF308, and it took off from further away too. This one took off from the Gulf of Mexico, not over the Florida Peninsula. So it's all but reasonable this one is probably done for the night after that kind of emergency turnaround that it just had there.
Yeah, so NOAA 2 probably done, AF308 probably 1, maybe 2 more passes.
All right, so just to reiterate, the National Hurricane Center are yet to confirm, but we have run with, at the start of this hour, Category 5 status for Hurricane Dorian. We are pretty confident about it based on both satellite estimates and recon plane estimates. The National Hurricane Center will update within 30 minutes and are most likely going to give it Category 5 status with at least 160 mile per hour winds. We are continuing to run until the end of this hour with commentary, and then we're going to be finishing up here, and we will be leaving you through the overnight hours with the imagery of this storm, as we did last night. I don't think I have anything else to say at this point, so the floor is open for anyone else.
I believe we're now joined by Ethan.
We are joined by Ethan just now, yes.
Hello, everyone.
Good evening. What are your thoughts?
What a storm.
Well,
I mean,
that is...
this storm, it had a chance at Category 5, and I never really thought that I would get because of its weird formation from the beginning, but here we are.
The threat to the Bahamas is very dire for the northernmost islands. 15 feet of storm surge is likely for those two northernmost islands, and hurricane force winds, major hurricane force winds, and possibly, if it makes landfall, Category 4 or 5 conditions could start to occur there. However, the storm is still around 120 miles away. Given that the storm is moving at about 8 miles per hour, it will still take the best part of 15 hours to get there. That is quite a long time when we talk about these storms. It is rather close to land, but it is still 15 hours away, and that's why we're talking about the possibility that hurricane force winds could be sustained on some of these land areas for over 24 hours, which could be totally catastrophic.
Yeah, and just goes to show how quickly things can change and develop too. Like, all of this has really just happened since we've been live in the past 6 hours as well. 5.5 to 6 hours, and the storm still has a long way to go in terms of time. It's a long time, but it's really still not a long time at the same time until this actually gets to land too. You know, we see it and it looks so close on the map, and it still has a while to go, mostly because it's a relatively small storm. And then, you know, we just see it kind of slowly trudge on, and by the time we wake up tomorrow morning and start our live coverage, it's basically going to be on top of those islands already. And that's just a terrifying thought to have, really.
I'm going to show you some water vapor imagery of the storm now as well, just another way of looking at it at this time, and you can see all the moisture contained inside that at this time. Devon, did you say that some of those islands are probably experiencing tropical storm force winds already now?
I would imagine that Eleuthera Island, and I believe the one to the south and east of that, Cat Island, are likely starting to experience tropical storm force.
And still the movement is almost due west, just north of west. As a matter of fact, the National Hurricane Center's last update had it at 280 degrees. And that would take it straight towards land there, unless the storm slows down and then opens up the possibility that it could start to turn towards the north. We do believe that that turn will happen eventually. It's all about the timing as to whether Florida particularly gets impacted very much by this storm or not. We're still just about saying that on the side of that it will, especially along coastal areas. Nonetheless, regardless of what happens all along the US East Coast, there is going to be rough surf and swells, and then potentially that heavy rainfall, particularly along coastal areas. So there could be flooding issues for large parts of the southeast. And from what I've heard over the last few days, it's already been wetter than average. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we certainly don't really want to experience this kind of disruption on top of already a wet year so far. Thomas, you're also with us at this point. Are you finding anything at the moment?
I'm not finding any new data at the moment, but still, I think that we can definitely say that Dorian is even surprised, and I was aggressive on this, and it's even surpassing my expectations at this point. So we can say undisputably it has winds of at least 165, correct?
Well, I would. We're going with 160 at the minute, waiting for the National Hurricane Center update to see what they say about anything more.
Got it. I know that there was a pressure down to 935 found.
That's news to me. 935?
The most got at flight level was 937.1, I think. It's kind of hard to get the best readings because that's what one of the planes got in 55 plus knot flight level winds, and AF308 its pressure was completely malfunctioning. Got us no readings during the eye during any of its passes.
Oh, disappointing.
As if any of the drop zones landed in the eyes. We got crucial information for flight level winds, and that drop zone that missed the eye and it landed in the northwestern Iowa actually helped surprisingly get us better information than we really would have gotten from a center drop. We're still waiting for more information to come out as time goes on. We're going to continue to monitor that through the top of the hour. Hopefully, when the NHC update comes out and verifies some new information for us.
After we finish at the top of the hour tonight, I believe Tim is off doing an update for us on the Force 13 YouTube channel, so he will be uploading that to the channel too, reflecting the latest updates. Just to remind you of our usual schedule, what's becoming an established one at this point, we'll be back again in the morning with more updates at 9 AM Eastern Time, and we'll see where we are by the time we get to lunchtime, maybe for a live update and then another update at 3 PM regularly throughout the day. Throughout the overnight hours from 11 till around 8, we will just be leaving you with the visuals here before we start prepping for the next update cycle. But at the minute, this is looking like a very ferocious storm, and we now await the National Hurricane Center update to see how they have interpreted it and how that might affect the forecast now.
Yeah, and also keep in mind we're talking all about this, and there's still other life-threatening storms potentially threatening land right now too. We have the area of interest that could be impacting Texas, southern Texas, or parts of Mexico and the Gulf of Mexico right now.
All right.
We have
this might be news to some people.
areas.
Let me just get the graphic up at the same time so that we can just help people out a little bit.
Yeah. While you're going over that as well, you got to keep in mind that there's two high watch areas of interest in the Western Pacific.
All right. Well, first let's talk about these Atlantic ones. So the
perfect.
Two disturbances there. The first one near Cape Verde could become a tropical cyclone in the next few days. That one has got a 30% chance in the next 48 hours and 60% chance through 5 days. And then the other one, which might pique some other people's interests, near the Yucatan Peninsula, 20% chance, 30% in the next 5 days. Over in the Eastern Pacific, there's a 90% chance system there. That's going to become a tropical cyclone and move out to sea. And in the Western Pacific, there are two areas of interest there, the red circles, that are likely to become tropical cyclones either side of the Philippines. 91W has already been tagged as a tropical depression by the Japan Meteorological Agency, the officials in that part of the world. And 92W is likely to become a tropical storm soon as well, so we'll be monitoring those too. But our hands are very full with Dorian, and there's some imagery there with the wrong mile per hour tag at the bottom. Just ignore that. That was Invest 91W as well. And this is the track forecast map from the National Hurricane Center that will be updating within the next 30 minutes, hopefully. Should be sooner than that, and their update will be due in a few moments. I don't know how long they're going to sit on it before they... Usually the National Hurricane Center put their update out a little bit earlier than what they say they're going to do. So we sort of come to expect it almost, that they'll issue it a little bit early. They might hold on until the very last minute to try and get the latest information from Recon.
Yeah, and it looks like one of the people in our chat room.
Hold off now.
Yeah, and it looks like one of the people in our chat room is Tim. He's the one making the update. I'm not sure. I don't really have all the raw recon data. I'm pretty sure Devin probably is able to find a lot better than me. But it looks like NOAA 2 found something that we could extrapolate based on wind speeds around the pressure at the time that could work out to 935 millibars. I want to see if anyone can verify that possibly.
I'm not going to go ahead and verify that, mainly because I don't think that the storm is actually that deep. So we'll have to play that by ear. The estimations for pressure from the flight level is typically incorrect. So it's typically deeper than what it is actually. So we said that this was 159.40. I would expect it, since it did look a little bit better since then, let's go with like a 939 or a 938. I wouldn't go any lower than 38.
That's what we will be going with at the top of the hour, regardless of what the miles per hour will end up being.
Yeah, and
I am waiting for drops.
Yeah, totally. And just for the next 19 minutes or so when we're still live, if you have any questions you want us to answer, I know there's a lot of new people in the chat right now. Start your message with Force13 all in text or at Force13 in text. Lights up the message a nice orange for us. We're able to see it, read it, help drive the conversation. We've been doing a lot.
It might
of
be a little bit difficult
today.
right now. There's
Maybe
a lot of cross traffic.
I know a lot of us are probably a bit worn out because it's been such an exhausting journey today. So having some people help drive the conversation is always a bit helpful for us.
I'm refreshing the IHC page constantly, so when the advisory comes
Yeah, I
out,
feel that.
I'll have it.
Yeah, I've been going back there periodically to see if they do anything. They're probably going to stretch it to the wire, maybe, because they're probably trying to do their best to change, any forecast trends or intensity changes that they want to do in the future with it, right?
I'm actually quite nervous about this update, to be honest.
I mean, we're all nervous. I mean, regardless of this, we should have already been nervous because it's a life-threatening and potentially very deadly storm heading directly to impact low-lying areas and potentially stalling over them for
I think
a day or so, too.
I think the thing that's really making this impactful is that the storm is a whole 15 miles per hour stronger than we thought it was. According to Recon. I think that is really the shocking thing that we're trying to process right now, is that Recon just confirmed that the storm is literally 15 miles per hour than we thought it was.
Yeah.
So you think it's 165, Devin?
The Recon, I think absolutely no doubt, showed 165. We had both of the planes go through there. We have a 155 knot SFMR, 3 different 145 knot SFMRs, and we have a drop zone that says 155 knots. So I'm going to say that, okay, you want to take into the fact that some of them are suspect? Sure, but are all of them? Probably not. I think 165 is the one that you're going to want to go with here.
Yeah, and just an update on the reconnaissance right now. NOAA 2, the one that did the emergency loop back around to try to verify data, looks like it's gone now. It's heading out of the storm for the last time. And AF308 looks like it's also heading out and not returning as well from the looks of it. So that could be the rest of the recon that we have for the night right now. It definitely came at the most crucial time.
Is there really anything in the immediate vicinity to stop the storm from intensifying even more?
No.
No, nothing.
Other than itself, no.
Oh boy.
So how much of an intensification window do you guys think that there is now before weakening is going to have to begin?
Well, I said 24 hours last night, and clearly that wasn't correct, so I guess we're just going to have to go with another 24 hours.
That's what I'm going.
Wow.
I'd say
That's a
as soon
long
as
time.
potential land interaction with its eye and its core and some of the Bahamian Islands starts to occur, that could be it.
Yes, but what
So
if the eye misses?
Well, if that happens, then we'll have the discussion then.
I suppose we will.
Yeah, because I don't want to think of that really. To be honest, I just want to. I was hoping that this would stay weaker. I was hoping 24 hours ago, when it looked like the western side of convection was about to completely collapse, that it would do that, and we wouldn't be in any situation like this. And that, unfortunately, has just really not happened at all.
Yeah, this is
At this rate, 175 doesn't seem too far-fetched in the near future.
Well,
I wouldn't quite get there. Yeah,
not right now.
We still can't jump the gun with things.
There's a case for 165, and if you're really feeling pushy, 170, but 175 is too far.
170 doesn't exist.
I was talking about 175 as if the storm intensifies up to there.
But
it's
could
not at
get
175
there,
right now.
but it's probably not there yet. We'd still need to see more improvement. And unfortunately, the time of day just makes it terrible for recon as well. And it looks like they're both done for the night, unfortunately. Hopefully, soon enough we get some more data in as well, though. I want to see some more of the 0Z runs come out from the models, the ones that start coming out in the morning, and then go on and see the...
Now, I don't know much about these recon planes and how far ahead they schedule the flights, but could they,
24 hours ahead.
Well, could they push it back, bring it forward rather, and go out earlier?
They could. It's typically very unlikely, though. They usually make the schedule for the day before.
But I mean, in emergency
the schedule,
situations.
like the schedule for today was made yesterday. The schedule for tomorrow was made today. Could they reschedule? Sure, but I don't know if we have the resources to be able to do that. I mean, you got to realize these planes do cost money to fly them out. So I don't know if we necessarily have the resources to be able to do that. I'm sure they're getting a plane into the storm as frequently as they possibly can.
And when is the next
So
one?
here's a question.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't looked at the recon.
All right, onto the question then.
Yeah, but I have a question. Actually, I lost my question. Oh, here it is. Are there going to be any? Is there a chance of any watches or warnings getting issued with this advisory?
We are about to find out. I don't think so. It's moving so slowly. I don't think National Hurricane Center will commit to any further watches or warnings just yet.
Yeah, I think we're gonna wait till tomorrow morning to see some new watches on the mainland if they end up popping up.
Do you not think there's I think there's a slight chance they could upgrade that tropical storm watch to a hurricane watch. I'm kind of surprised they didn't do that before.
Well, I mean, it's time. They have time requirements before impact for each thing, really, and it's not within the time zone, I don't think, for a hurricane watch to come up at this point in time.
Well, it would be if they're expecting hurricane conditions. But clearly they're not.
They could upgrade it at some point tomorrow.
I mean,
it's just a wait and see with them.
Yeah. It's not very often you see a tropical storm watch get upgraded to a hurricane watch. Usually it's a tropical storm warning, and then a hurricane watch gets added. Anyway, the National Hurricane Center is still due to update anytime in the next 12 or 11 minutes. Just stick with us and we'll get the latest to you. We certainly have it down as a Category 5 at this point. The National Hurricane Center are likely to go with that and could go even higher than 160 miles per hour based on some of the recon evidence that we've been showing you, that we've been relaying to you over the last hour and a bit. We're still looking at infrared imagery of Hurricane Dorian as it continues to push slowly towards the west-northwest at about 8 miles per hour.
Both recon planes are now headed back to base.
Yeah, it looks like they're both done for the night. We're not going to see anything else from them. But, I mean, fortunately, they came in at a very crucial time and provided very important information.
Yeah, we're just nervously waiting here for a few more minutes.
Does anyone think that that the NHC could pull a shocker on us and go for 155?
That would be a complete
That
shock
would be
to everyone
egregious.
involved. 18 degrees Celsius is the eye right now, and the
That's
cloud
warmer than
tops regularly minus 70 plus. Although on the western side there is still a weakness, and you can see it quite clearly now on the imagery that we're looking at on our screen. The western side, just that little break there, is the only thing that goes against the storm at the moment.
Yeah, like I've been saying, it's kind of like cat and mouse on the imagery for us all night to see when or if that
For
may finally
days.
fully lock up.
For days.
Yeah, really, and it's especially before it was with a bit warmer cloud tops, and now it's with these minus 70s today, watching to see if they'll chase each other around and finally lock up. But it's been the trend of the past 6 hours. See, how close are they going to get? Is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? In terms of whether or not I'd reach Category 5 intensity, that unfortunately hasn't really mattered at all. In terms of
UNHC report has come out. They're about to come out with a new advisory.
Okay,
I thought you said it was out right now. Okay.
No.
Initial preliminary reports are out now. The advisory is about to come out any second.
All right. Well, we'll let you know as soon as that happens. At the moment, we're just in a sort of unnerving quiet as we wait for a few more minutes.
Eerie silence almost,
And there is the update. No changes in the warnings, and they are going with 150 miles per hour and a pressure of 940 millibars.
What?
From what we're seeing here, unless they've made an error, they have gone with 150 miles per hour and a pressure of 940 millibars.
That is a big shocker.
That is shocking.
They have indeed gone with that at this time. 150 miles per hour at the update, 940 millibars from the National Hurricane Center. Thoughts from the team?
Wow.
I'm pretty surprised to see that.
Too low.
Doesn't make sense to me, at least, based on the data we've received from them. They turned around and went back for the data, and it just completely contradicts what they went for. I'm not really sure what to say. I want to see the forecast discussion come out and see what they have to say about it via that. But
the forecast discussion calls for a peak of 155 miles per hour.
That's not updated yet.
12Z on the 1st. That's in 12 hours' time, and then for gradual weakening. Still very much the same forecast, actually, as they originally went with. That's what they're saying at 3 a.m. UTC.
Is there a reason they haven't gone with Category 5? Did they state that?
We've got no idea at the minute. This is very strange.
I want the forecast discussion come out. I am...
That will come out in a little while. Devon, can you offer any insight?
I'm trying to figure out what they ended up seeing that we have missed.
I want to see the forecast discussion.
This doesn't seem right to me. I mean, we have 150 knot flight level winds. We have not one, not two, not three, but five different, actually, if you want to count the Air Force flight, Category 5 SFMR readings that are unflagged, tried, true, and tested. And we had the drop zone reading that also says Category 5. So
this is quite extraordinary.
I don't know what they're looking at that has them convinced that the recon data is wrong, because I don't think it's a satellite either, because the satellite is indicative of the storm being stronger than 150 miles an hour.
Borderline at least.
Well. Yeah, and with cloud top, that recon always goes over it because of Irma, for example.
And I mean, I certainly think it's a Category 5. I'm sold by it, and I might have a slight reputation of going low on some of these storms. This seems rather extraordinary.
They've gone against their own data.
You know my reputation of lowballing storms. So
yeah, I think the NHC are
kind
of going out on a limb with this one, in my opinion.
Well, we're gonna have. I'm gonna wait for the forecast discussion, and I think I'm going to be taking to Twitter to discuss this.
Well, this is really fascinating. The National Hurricane Center not going with Category 5 intensity at their 11 p.m. update against all of this evidence that we've been seeing in the last hour.
They're going against their own data, really.
Completely baffling. We will see whether they do have a good reason for it in the forecast discussion, which will come out in a few moments. In the meantime, we'll just gloss over all of that and show you. Let's see if we've got the new cone that's come out just yet. We will get that to you as soon as we can. I think they're calling for a more profound stalling motion over the Bahamas now.
Yeah, it looks like the 5 days.
We'll bring that to you as soon as we can.
It looks like the 5 day out is maybe ever so slightly further to the west, but there's definitely more pronounced stalling motion that they show.
I did notice that the 5 day point is actually in exactly the same place.
Yeah, and I'm just waiting for that forecast discussion to come out, really. Oh, there it is. It's out now. It just came out. They said both aircraft measured peak.
They don't like it because the flight level winds doesn't match the reductions. There's 150 knot flight level winds in the system. You usually reduct that to be from a knot reading to a mile an hour reading, and then turn that back. So there's 150 knot. There's a 150 knot flight level reading that would be indicative of a Category 5.
Yeah,
the flight level winds are 150 knots, and they got the Category 5. Like, I get that, but then you guys go ahead and say that Hurricane Matthew gets 135 knot flight level winds, and then you say that's 165 mile an hour, and you're saying this ain't a Cat 5? Are you kidding me?
They better issue some sort of special advisory.
Baffled right now.
They're saying in the discussion there have been some higher surface wind estimates from the SFMR, but these data estimates are questionable based on our experience of very high SFMR rate measured wind speeds in the recent strong hurricane that didn't match standard flight level wind reductions.
That's essentially the wording, indeed, that Devon was taking off there.
And then you have. And then how does that explain the drop zone reading of 155 knots at the surface? How is that explained with that? That doesn't... I don't think that is a sufficient enough reason to say 150 miles an hour. And even then, satellite also... the storm is clearly strengthened since we've called it 150 miles an hour. How much is it strengthened? 5 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour?
Very borderline.
It's hard to tell, but it is clearly stronger than when they put out 130 knots initially.
Yes, I had a bit of a gut feeling that they would stick with 150 miles, or even though
like I said,
really is looking like a Category 5.
Like I said, the procedure is if the forecaster does not believe that there is sufficient evidence to override the current intensity estimate, the intensity estimate is to remain what it is. And what he's saying here is that he does not believe that there is sufficient enough evidence to upgrade the intensity of this storm. I think that's very questionable. I mean, clearly this guy's getting paid the 6 figures to go ahead and write these reports. He knows something that we clearly don't. We're gonna go with his word on this, but I don't know what we're missing on this one, honestly. I just don't know what we're missing on this. I think they're seeing something that we just aren't seeing.
But it doesn't sound like they are from what you surmised initially, Devon.
Nor from their discussion.
The discussion doesn't bring up anything else in to go on.
I think that there is something that they see that they didn't put in the discussion that says that this is not a Cat 5.
But I tell you what, if they do what they usually do and upgrade the thing to a Category 5 in post-season analysis, then what are you going to say?
I mean, this is
then
my
I'm
thing
going to
with
say
it.
that I was right on the live stream.
I mean, this is my thing with it, is that, you know, the forecaster Brown saying, you know, it's because, you know, questionable SFMR readings with potentially powerful storms. Well, how does that explain a drop zone to the northwestern eyewall, like Devon said, getting 155 knots? It doesn't. You know, that's just not how it works.
Like I said, I'm just gonna accept it. That I will strongly question this, but I will accept it. 150 miles an hour. All right, fine. I think you're lowballing the storm by 15 miles an hour there, but fine. That's what you want to go with. It's still an extremely dangerous storm heading for the Bahamas. So, yeah, bear down and make sure that you follow all local procedures and, yeah, and make sure that you're in a sturdy structure that is able to withstand tornado-like winds that are going to be associated with this extremely powerful storm. That's all. That is absolutely all that I have to comment on about this.
Well, we're gonna go away now. That's it for our coverage tonight. We will keep this stream running with the visuals of Hurricane Dorian on the satellite imagery all night long. By morning, we will have more updates starting at 9 AM Eastern Time. But for now, we will leave you with the satellite imagery of Hurricane Dorian, which sounds like it should be a Category 5. National Hurricane Center staying with not even 155 miles an hour. It's 150 miles per hour at their update, and that's what they're running with. Whether that remains the case for very long, we will see. Regardless of the storm's intensity, it is a extreme threat to the northernmost Bahamas that are under a hurricane warning, and it will possibly make landfall within 24 hours on some of those islands. It's going to be a very tough 48 hours, maybe even longer for that region, and then it could move on to Florida as well. But that's it from us tonight. Stay tuned, subscribe to the channel if you want more updates throughout the duration of this storm. You know where we are if you need to see the latest on the storm. Good night from us, hope you have a good one, and we'll see you again tomorrow morning.